Okay, perfect. Yeah. So, welcome everyone to our weekly live session as usual. The date is Sunday, October 24th, and we just came off a very eventful week. A lot happening in the markets this week, so pretty exciting. Some of the kind of notable things to occur in this week is a new all-time high achieved on Tesla, which I was discussing and predicted last week. So we took advantage of that. Also, a couple of rejections, which I anticipated. Also took advantage of that on puts and took advantage with the premiums sort of a little bit overinflated heading into earnings. Also, SPY QQQ achieving new all-time highs, also as predicted 3 weeks ago when we entered both the leaps and the end of October calls. So that was great. Additionally, Bitcoin achieved a new all-time high this week as well on October 20th, which was, I believe, Wednesday. So also predicted that on that dip buy, which I've been discussing over the past few weeks. So very eventful week, a lot of volume, a lot of action in the markets. Also pretty notable is the Trump SPAC, which seemed to just go, ballistic. Pretty notable there. We did take advantage of, a bit of that move. We did not expect it to, jump as much as it did, but it did. So we'll discuss that later on. But I think there's a lot of depth to the kind of thesis over there in with that ticker. So I think it can be pretty active over the next few weeks or months or so in the kind of meme space. Meme stock space. So I think this Trump SPAC is sort of that new meme stock to kind of replace GME. So I'll discuss that a little bit later on. But this coming week we have a jam-packed earnings week. So a lot of earnings throughout the week. We're back in earnings season. Too many for me to name, but I'll mention some of the ones that I'm a little bit more focused on. So Monday we have Facebook reporting. They did have quite a bit of a drop as a result of poor Snapchat earnings, which Facebook tends to garner some weakness as a result every quarter, unless we have a pretty significant quarter to the upside, like we saw, I believe, last quarter on Snapchat. So Facebook has been getting quite the hit. In addition to that, it has been getting hit because of some of the legal issues clouding Facebook, as well as the whistleblower that former employee of Facebook that has come out to mention how Facebook's targeting and their analytics and their entire platform, the way it targets ads and collects information, is very detrimental to especially young kids, but to everyone really. So it's been getting quite a hit there. And I also believe that a lot of the social media stocks have been getting quite the hit over the past few days, 2 days, because of the Trump SPAC. Being that it is sort of a alternative to the big tech and traditional media spaces. So, because of that, these big tech companies, social tech companies like Facebook, Snapchat, etc., have been getting quite the hit. So, that might be one to watch. So I'll be focused on that. AMD reporting Tuesday. Pinterest, Twitter as well, all reporting Tuesday. Same thing with Twitter. Quite the hit. I did pick up calls on Twitter. The premiums, I think, were a little bit better than Facebook, which is why I went with Twitter. And also with Twitter, we can see Facebook's earnings, and if I believe that it would likely make more of a chance to make a likely upwards move rather than a downwards move after the price action that we've seen throughout the past week. So Twitter would get kind of a sympathy from that. AMD watching because of the chip shortage. So definitely watching that one. Pinterest obviously watching because of the buyout. So looking at that one with PayPal. So definitely watching that. Apple also getting a bit of a hit. So watching that for Wednesday. Ford reporting as well on Wednesday. We'll be watching that. Spotify, Microvision, um, FISV, Hog, which is Harley Davidson, eBay, Teladoc, and on Thursday and Friday, MoneyGram and Flowers.com, both reporting. So those are some of the earnings that I'll be more focused on my end. I think these are more better risk and reward plays for these specific names. So I'll be watching everything, of course, but just more of a focus on these names. Going into the week, it's going to be a pretty busy week, so we'll see how it goes. Sometimes when we're at the point in the market where we are currently, where we're a little bit extended, we can see sort of the opposite effect on earnings, where we have an earnings week that kind of misses and we get some selling off. So I think this is a pretty crucial week to watch. I think that based on the chart as well, and where we're situating on most tickers, some of the big names, I think it's possible to get a little bit of a downside from here, but we'll see where we go. And I'll pass it on to DJ, who will cover it further and go over his usual SPY analysis.
Yeah, so a really crazy week, to be honest. The markets did recover to pretty much almost a all-time high on SPY. Actually, we may have hit it. I actually do think we did hit a new all-time high this week on SPY. Pretty much just a 2-week pretty much recovery off the daily chart. Once we retook the daily EMA, SPY really continued up along with QQQ and pretty much just put in a very, very bullish back-to-back week. And very quickly, in a span of 2 weeks, we're pretty much back to all-time highs again. Not too surprising there, because just retaking the daily EMA and trend is quite bullish. And this current market, as long as you hold the bull trend, it's more likely than not you just shoot up, as no one really knows where the top is or when it will be in the short term. So we'll take a look at the daily chart here. Pretty much, as I've said, just straight up. Friday, a little bit of consolidation, not really too much. It's very bullish. So now we're pretty much just looking at the daily uptrend. So all-time high resistance, 454.67, and we'll be looking as the daily EMA to hold support around 448. SPY, for the most part, it's very strong. Here, weekly chart, like we saw, pretty much we got this dip like we did in the past, and followed by 3 green weeks. Now we're no longer overbought as well, and we are, making this kind of U-shaped recovery. So next week, if we put in a higher low, and we should be looking for new all-time highs on both the indices as well. But the more of the action on, of course, the Trump SPAC and the rest of the market. So I'll touch more into those. I don't think it was necessarily a too important of a week in indices. They just recovered all-time highs, but that's not too significant this week. I think the significance of this week was the fact that we saw massive money inflows onto the Trump SPAC that pretty much almost 20x in the span of 2 days. And because of that, and a lot of retail pouring in as well, it really brought back the volatility in the markets. As we've seen, there's a variety of sympathy plays, or Trump alternative kind of small caps that people are just kind of pumping all over the place. And in a span of 2 days, there's like multiple tickers, 5 or 6 different tickers that just pretty much doubled in very, very quick succession, span of a few hours or so, just following the volatility hype. We're seeing really massive moves into small caps, medium caps, SPACs, and even though overall market has been more volatile as a result of this, so it is good, and especially it's the weekend, so we're getting kind of media attention all over the place on the Trump SPAC and the action. And this creates kind of just a short-term frenzy where everybody is looking for the next play, and they'll kind of be just jumping on whatever is gaining momentum and rising in the market. So what that does is it really creates a lot of trading opportunity. So if you're a long-term investor, it doesn't change too much. It just adds volatility. But for short-term traders, it's very beneficial because we're just going to be seeing massive moves all over the place in pretty much a lot of small caps, shares, medium caps. Like gonna see like 30% moves up, 30% moves down, span of intraday, which is something we haven't seen in a very, very long time, pretty much since last kind of GME craze or SPAC craze. So just adding a whole lot of volume and volatility is very good to be watching. Add a little bit more indices, like Ramg mentioned, it is the start of earnings season, and once again, all large caps, pretty much all FANG stocks should be reporting next week, and followed by just non-stop earnings for the next month and a half. So it really is just really going to be kind of jam-packed. Small caps should be flying all over the place. Earnings will be making stocks fly over the place. So there will be a ton of volatility in the coming weeks, which translates to good opportunity. Moving forward, QQQ, a bit weaker than SPY as we didn't hit a new all-time high. We rejected and sort of pulled back a bit more on Friday. Tech was just slightly weaker overall, mainly to do with the Snapchat miss that pretty much dragged down Google, Facebook, and they're large components of the QQQ, so it kind of dragged down everything. But that could change depending on how Facebook earnings go on Monday next week and how the rest of the FANGs report, or it could kind of continue that trend. But regardless, I don't plan on playing too much on the large cap space or for next week. If there's good earnings opportunity, we'll be looking at that. But I think focus next week would probably just be small caps, sympathy plays off the Trump SPAC, and things along the lines of that, because this week we've been incredibly successful. Even with selling the SPAC a lot earlier, it was still like almost 100% gains. And then following just a couple sympathy plays, we saw like returns of like 50% plus in like the span of like 30 minutes. So I expect the same to occur next week, at least the first few days of next week. I'm pretty sure the volatility will be there and things will be flying all over the place. So it's going to be really fun in that aspect. And going to be looking forward to that. Weekly QQQ, similar to SPY, just a little bit weaker for the reasons I mentioned. And we'd be looking if we can continue this kind of cup and handle move to all-time highs or not. It's just going to depend on earnings next week, so pretty much. FANGs need to really blow out earnings, because as we've seen, even if the earnings blow out, it's in gap downs, and if the earnings slightly miss, you get punished really hard, like Snapchat. So it has some pretty high expectations baked in, so it would really require a lot of moves. But good earnings are being bought, so I do want to mention that. For example, Netflix earnings was quite impressive, but it actually, even though initially popped, I think 3 or 5% after hours, Netflix actually proceeded to open lower the next day before the dip kind of bought. So I mean, you can take a look at Netflix, for example. So this was the day prior to earnings, and this was earnings day. So we actually opened around 3-4% lower on Netflix on good earnings, and even went as low as like -5% intraday. We ended up closing around neutral, but the following 2 days, Netflix pretty much just shot up another 8% into all-time highs, with the dip kind of just being bought on the initial kind of sell the earnings expectation. Similarly, Tesla is actually pretty much the same thing. It had very good earnings as well, and it opened pretty much flat, if not a little bit lower. But that dip also pretty much just got bought right from the open, and 2 follow-up days to make a new all-time high. So I do think that's seeming to be the trend. Is there's no real reason to be buying calls pre-earnings and holding through earnings on these large cap tech stocks. It would need to be on like a stock that not a lot of people have awareness on, and then it kind of gaps up like 20% or something. But for the most part, all of these large cap tech stocks have expectations baked in completely. So no matter how well the earnings are, unless it's like a complete blowout, mind-blowing blowout, it's pretty much just going to open flat or down. But it does seem like the market is rewarding good earnings as even on a flat open or gap down. Um, the following days, it seems to be getting bought up very strongly to continuation. So that's a notable trend going forward. I think pretty much means if the earnings is actually good, and the following day it kind of doesn't respond too great, I can probably pick up monthly calls or something out of the money to kind of take advantage of that. As well as potentially risky, but could potentially sell some out of the money calls pre-earnings, depending on the premiums, just to take advantage of that. But that's a lot riskier play, so I think the former idea is pretty much better. And then gonna look at DWAC, so pretty much that's Trump SPAC Digital World Acquisition Corp. It pretty much opened around 12 and then just shot up to as high as like 46 that day, and then touched like 175 before going back. So a lot of people, I mean, this is like guaranteed going to play out as like a pump and dump. So just to throw that out there, like it is pretty much just a sole pump and dump play. I do not believe the actual fundamental value will kind of kick into the stock for not for a very long time. This is just pretty much going to be the new meme stock, like Ramg mentioned, and it's kind of going to go all over the place. It looks like the top is in for now, just because it dropped like 50% from the high. So the expectation is that 175 top is in, and the temporary bottoms are like 68. So that's a really big range, just a 1 day range. So just between 175 and 68, that's honestly like a 50% range to be looking at the following week, and we'll be playing those two levels as support and resistance. So there will be significant movement on it. I do think this can actually go higher, like higher than 200, maybe 300. Not immediately, but I do think it might be something similar to GME, where you have the initial run up to the hundreds, and then it kind of consolidates, stays flat, and fades, and everyone kind of forgets about it. And out of nowhere, it seemingly seems to pop like $100 again, and then squeeze all the way back up. This can definitely do it because of the amount of just sheer volume and it's definitely very, very controversial stock. Even more controversial than GameStop for sure. Like, there's a lot of shorters, a lot of longs, a lot of people who like this guy, a lot of people who hate this guy. So it really will be heavily manipulated. To be honest, like big institutions and big money are really going to manipulate this thing, and they're probably just going to burn people in both directions. But most likely, at least for now, the shorts are kind of screwed. So I mean, if you're short this, then you're just kind of screwed. So I wouldn't ever recommend shorting this, to be honest. Just like when GME was going ballistic, it's just not worth the inherent risk that is worth from shorting a stock. Like there's just better things to be shorting, and not taking the risk to absolutely lose everything, because it really only takes a few minutes, kind of push up, halt, and this thing just gets halted all over the place, whether it's up or down. So once it's halted, you're pretty much like not in control of anything, and it can do anything it wants. But I do think it's a good play to be watching. But after an initial play, I don't plan on making too many entries onto this play, or at least not very large size anymore. If anything, I might take a couple of small size flips, depending on the price action of it. But for the most part, I'll be using this as kind of like a new indicator and kind of seeing alternatives. So there's a whole bunch of sympathy plays that people are kind of finding on Twitter or Reddit and all that. And I think those are kind of the place to be going to. You can kind of use this as the main indicator. They're somewhat correlated, but those plays would offer a lot lower risk, than something like this, because they wouldn't have popped as hard, and they would have levels of supports and so you're risking a lot less on the downside, where the upside has yet to really blow up, so you're still getting good upside. But for this play, for the most part, the upside has already gone up 20x, so upside is limited, and then downside, there's quite a lot with the lack of support. So I'll be using this as an indicator, but wouldn't really make too many plays on it. And then going to Uber, it hasn't been performing too well, similarly to some of the other reopened stocks. It's been pulling back a bit, but the daily is still a nice uptrend. We did pull back a bit more here. I don't expect to drop below 44.70. Like I don't really expect to drop below this daily Bollinger Band heading into earnings. Earnings is in about like 2 weeks. In about 2 weeks, so I do have like 40% of the position after flipping like 10-20% back and forth. I am probably going to add to this play early next week, I would say, and then probably just hold on to it. I probably won't add too much until the week leading up to earnings, so I'll probably maybe add up to 60 to maybe 70% of the allocated position until the actual week of the earnings, and I do expect to see a run up by then, and I think it's still quite good risk reward play, and this pullback I think is quite viable, so I would be adding on to this. I'm not really too worried. Premiums are kind of cheap, so I wouldn't mind holding into earnings as well, depending on the price action before that. So overall, indices very strong, pretty much SPY all-time high, QQQ almost all-time high. Big earnings season and week next week, so it's really it's just going to dictate what happens, and it's going to be during after hours and overnight for the most part. Like it's not like you can't really do too much. Besides intraday, you can't really do too much because it can either gap up or gap down just on the results of these large cap tech earnings. But I do think it's more likely to open lower than open higher on most of the earnings, just because as we've seen, good earnings still has gap down or open flat, or earnings have just gotten obliterated. So I think that trend will kind of continue. Um, but all eyes and attention on small caps and sympathy plays heading to next week for me. Gonna pass it over to Ramg for him to cover his stuff for the week.
Yeah, let me just share my screen.
Yeah, sure.
Let me know if you can see it fine.
Yeah, it looks good.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So, yeah, as the DJ covered, we've gotten back into this range, so we have recovered quite a bit on SPY. And we're at new highs. So now I think it's basically should be dictated by earnings week this week and into the weeks ahead. I think it's it's possible for us to see kind of bearish reversal. So just kind of watching there. I did enter some. Couple months out, 2 months out puts, as I mentioned. So they were green on this past Friday. Um, the confidence level isn't as strong, so that's why I went a little bit further out. Reason being is that if we do start to kind of rally, we won't see much of a as much of a decline. So I mean, when we were reaching highs on SPY and rallying that day, these were down about 15%, which isn't too bad. And then they actually turned green, going up about 5%. So pretty good. I did enter some shorter term puts as well. So I'm just going to be monitoring that for the week ahead, going forward. QQQ, same thing. We did squeeze out of that wedge that we saw kind of building up that day, which I mentioned, and I posted the chart, and we kind of squeezed out through that. Moving into Tesla, as I mentioned this week, I mentioned that we would have really great earnings. And we would see a lot of price target upgrades, market wide throughout all the Wall Street firms. And the day after, we did see that several price target upgrades throughout almost all the major firms out there on Wall Street. So really played out just as I predicted. We had quite a few rejections of the 900 level throughout the week. Each of them, and I anticipated. We played those puts down, which garnered significant return, which is good. And then we finally broke out of that 900 range. Reaching a high, which was great. We did have calls throughout that, so looked really great. Going forward, going to keep an eye on Tesla. I think we can possibly, form kind of a bottom on at 900 and continue up. Chart looks good. But we'll see where we go. I think some of the alternative earnings might have an impact. We'll see how it goes, but going to keep an eye on Tesla. I think it looks good regardless. I did exit, full position in calls, just to kind of secure profit and just to be safe on the safe side. Wouldn't want to kind of let those profits disappear. So did secure profits. We did sell at the highs, so it was around 810. Sorry, 910, 911. So pretty good, and it closed. It did sell off midday and then closed around the same levels at those highs. So looks pretty good on Tesla. Some of the other plays, just to cover quickly, we have MCHP. They do have earnings next week, I believe. So I thought it was a good run into earnings. It did run quite a bit. Our calls moved up 50%. I am holding still about 1/3 position, so holding that, going into earnings, will likely not hold through earnings. So we'll see how it goes, kind of depending on price action going forward. Zoom, one that I picked up on October 12th, and have been holding since. I picked up shares just because of the price levels we're at. We actually got basically the exact bottom, 256. The low was about 250, and we've been going up ever since. We hit 280s, I believe. Yeah, 286, and just kind of been trimming a bit. But Zoom, just a great risk reward at the current levels it's at. It's just been on a constant decline. So I mean, just a great risk reward play there. Maybe I could have went out with calls, but I thought shares were just much more safer. Just kind of you hold it, and not much of a time decay. So you don't have to worry about the time decay there. So in case it did kind of break a little bit lower, but great risk reward, and still holding pretty significant position there. Just going forward, just great risk reward overall. PayPal, we got quite the sell-off on the Pinterest rumors, you could say, that they are buying them out. Rightfully so. So I waited after the second day for quite a bit of a sell-off before buying in. We did close, at kind of new lows here. So the calls are down a bit, but they are November calls, so I do think we can recover in time. Also, I purchased as well because I think it's a good risk reward, just because of the fact that the company hasn't really confirmed whether the buyout is in fact correct, and the details of the buyout that were mentioned in the rumors. So I think that if we do, there is a chance that we can get some sort of response from the company, possibly saying that the buyout is false. If that is the case, we would see a significant move up. By principle, it should be kind of coming up, where we were, but at least halfway up, possibly even more. We'll get a significant move up. Is that likely? I'm not too sure, but it's clear that kind of shareholders don't seem to like the deal. A lot of negative media coverage as well. Wondering why PayPal is buying Pinterest. I can't seem to figure out too much of a bullish thesis as to why they're buying Pinterest, but I mean, clearly, if it is true, management has some plans there. So I'm not too sure about Pinterest, but I do think that it is a pretty significant buyout. I think about 40 billion. So if you look at PayPal's market cap, it's a pretty significant buyout for them. So I'm not too sure if it is in fact correct, but we will get some kind of confirmation on Pinterest earnings in the earnings call. I think obviously analysts will be asking management and investor relations there. So I think we'll get a little bit more of a clear up there. But I think it's just a good risk reward at these levels, since we got quite a bit of a sell off there. So continuing to hold those PayPal calls. I think we had a question from someone here, outlook on PayPal November 19th call. So I think the outlook is good. I think I'll just be watching to see if we kind of get any confirmation of the buyout. I think even if the company does confirm, with the sell off we've gotten, we've wiped quite a bit of value off PayPal. So I think we could get kind of an opposite of the sell the news, where we kind of make a move up, but we'll see how it goes. Just continuing to hold those. We'll average down if we get to any kind of significant selling, but I don't suspect we'll go too much lower because of the move that we've made. And then in regards to the SPY puts as well, I mentioned that I think the outlook is good. If we do continue with strength, I will sell those at a loss. I don't think there'll be any significant loss, as they are December puts. I think it'll be about down maybe 15-20%. as we saw, the past week when we were reaching new highs on SPY. And then DWAC, or DWC, Digital World Acquisition, really significant. Kind of it kind of took the show for this week in the markets. A lot of media attention. Definitely, I definitely didn't expect it to see it after 2 days, where it was at 175 at the high. So pretty significant. I think it's important to talk about the market psychology behind this one as well, because I think this one, I was thinking about it, and I think this one is a pretty unique one, because I think it's become sort of the new token meme SPAC, and I think, sorry, meme stock, and I think it can kind of rival and replace GME possibly. So I think this one is definitely to be around. I mean, at a 175, as we saw the high price, your valuation is just an insane valuation. A lot of money here. So I think it'll sort of move similar to GME, where we could see some, I mean, it's a pretty significant sell off from the high, 175 to where we close, which is 95. But obviously, I mean, it's a pretty significant move from, $12 at the open to where we were at. So I think that this is a pretty unique one as well, because if you look at the psychology behind GME, you had a sort of what I call social investing thesis, where it's a kind of new phenomenon where there's a social cause behind the investment. So in GME's case, it was sort of the liberation of the retail end of the market in comparison to the institutional end. So it was sort of a thesis of, we're sticking it to the hedge funds, and we have buying and holding, and we have a large amount of individuals that will buy the stock, and no matter where GME goes, they do not sell. So you have people on the short end where they're getting kind of screwed on the way up. But then with GME, what's unique is that I think when you have a social investing thesis like GME, that was behind GME, anyone who's shorting it isn't really shorting against the cause. So they're not shorting against the sticking it to the hedge funds. No one's shorting against that, but they're shorting solely because of the overvaluation. So they're shorting solely because of the price. But I think this one is a unique one, because we have a lot of people shorting not just because of the overvaluation in the price, but I think we have a lot of people shorting Trump, right? So they're shorting the idea of Trump. They're shorting anything Trump. They're shorting because they dislike Trump. So I think it's a pretty different dynamic, a pretty unique dynamic, and it'll be interesting to see. I think it's also pretty notable because when you have a large amount of people shorting because they want to short Trump, obviously the longs are favored towards the shorts, because the shorts are by default leveraged. You're having interest accumulated, and your losses are unlimited, literally, right? Whereas when you're long, you have a limited loss. If it goes to zero, that's your max loss. And you don't have to be leveraged, and you can sort of hold on as long as you'd like, no matter where it goes up or down. Where on the short end, you are leveraged by default. Interest is accumulating, and your losses are infinite. And if you get a move like 12 to 175, I mean, you're getting a margin call, right? So obviously the longs are favored towards the shorts, but we have I think we have quite a bit of people kind of purchasing this as a we have a little bit of I think just supporting in support of Trump. I think we have a bit of kind of a thesis of people buying to make a statement towards the current administration. So possibly unhappy with the current administration, but I think we have a large amount of people that are more so purchasing as a kind of a kind of cause, where it's sticking it to mainstream media, big tech and the kind of dictatorship of what we've seen in some of these larger social media companies where they have, all the power. And I think, the heads of Twitter and Facebook have more power really than Congress at this point, right? Because these big social media companies really control the entire narrative. And the New York Times and whatnot, Fox, whatever, CNN, they're both very biased on each end. And I think with mainstream media, I think a lot of people are kind of tired of the idea of mainstream media, and this is a sort of alternative with Trump's social Truth Social. So I think with the money that they've garnered through this SPAC, if they can de-SPAC correctly, I think that it's possible to see, a real product and some real success come out of the SPAC. But it is pretty difficult. It's not an easy task. They're not de-SPACed yet, so for it to run to 175 without being de-SPACed, it's pretty crazy, right? I don't think anyone could have predicted a run to 175. Given that the SPAC bubble popped, 40 is insane, and 50 is just kind of out of this world. So, for us to see 175, it is a low float. So it's pretty crazy. So I think it's here to stay, definitely. So I think you kind of got to keep an eye on it. I'll be watching it to see where we kind of go, how price action goes. I think if it gets low enough, it's kind of worth an entry to kind of just hold and see where it goes. But definitely this stock is not disappearing anytime soon. I think it'll make just quite volatile moves up and down, and we'll see how it goes there. But a lot of a very interesting stock here, a lot different from, like I said, GME and stuff, because you have quite a very hefty fight on the long and short end, because this has kind of become a Trump stock, where it's not really the company itself, but it's just the name Trump. So you have obviously a very polarizing figure. So you have people who, like DJ said, love him and hate him. So you have a very tight fight for the short and long end. So it'll be pretty interesting to see where it goes. But with that being said, I think because it's so polarizing, and because as I mentioned, we have people buying it up and we have people shorting it, not because of the price, but actually, shorting Trump. I think it has the potential to go, to new lengths that GME hasn't went to. So we'll see where it goes. I think the psychology is pretty interesting there behind this SPAC. But I mentioned, I also want to mention as well that I believe one of the members mentioned that options are coming on DWAC on Monday. So I haven't confirmed that, but I'll look into it today just to confirm. But if we do have options on DWAC, I think it's worth purchasing either calls or puts. I'd rather purchase calls than puts, depending on where the price is at. Because if we saw with GME, we're looking at IV of, upwards of 300, 400, just insane numbers. And the premiums are just, jacked up insanely on these type of meme stocks. So I think if we're able to see options come out on this stock and the premiums aren't too bad, I think it's worth buying it up, because even if we drop, 50%, with how inflated these premiums are, sometimes the calls won't even drop a penny, right? So I'll watch how the premiums are priced, and I think it's worth an entry on some, longer term calls if the premiums are decent. Because when they get jacked up and the premiums get jacked up and a bunch of people start buying it, you'll see appreciation in the price. So yeah, but very interesting play here. I think this is sort of one of those once in a lifetime kind of takers that, the story will kind of live on forever, because it's pretty unique, being that, they have this Trump name, and people on both sides. It's very polarizing stock. So moving into the cryptos, and we did achieve a new all-time high on Bitcoin. So Really great from our re-entry at 41.5. We have sold off since, and we've been kind of hovering around this price point. We did take some profit at the new all-time highs. I haven't bought back. I would like to see a little bit lower, but we'll see it. We are supporting around that level, so we'll see where it goes. But continuing to watch on the Bitcoin end. Another crypto I hold, as you guys know, ADA. We've just been kind of completely flat in a range for the past week or so. We're sitting at 212. We repurchased around 220 and 230. So just continuing to hold that. If it drops a little bit lower, I'll add again. But you can see we're kind of squeezing here a little bit. So just continuing to watch that. I think we could potentially get a pretty larger move to the upside or downside. I'd bet on the upside. So continuing to watch that, and I'll mention if I do make another buy on ADA. But overall, continuing to watch for the next week, all the earnings. We have a jam-packed earnings week. We'll be keeping an eye on the indices to see where we go, and some of our individual names. We've had a lot of great names. All of our plays are hitting, nicely. All successful plays, so looks really good. Also watching NEM, which is another NEM, which is another play that I have currently, a silver play, performing very well. Twitter will be watching as they do have their earnings. I did enter very small on calls. Good risk reward where it's at. Continuing to watch the other plays as well. We'll be watching, keeping an eye on Tesla as usual. DWAC, we'll see where it goes, and some keeping a kind of focus on some of the other earnings. Pretty busy week in the market, I think it'll be with all the earnings, so we'll be staying tuned. PayPal as well, keeping an eye, as well as Pinterest. Both of them very correlated currently as with the buyout. So we'll be keeping an eye on both of those and looking for any sort of confirmation there or denial of the buyout of Pinterest by PayPal. So it's going to be a busy week, so we'll keep you guys updated. But that's all on my end. So I hope everyone has an amazing remainder of the day, remainder of the weekend, and we'll be back tomorrow on Monday to go get this money, guys. So take care, everyone, and enjoy your night.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Cheers.